Hi, everyone, and welcome to this episode of Between Friends. I'm Ashley Jones, and we are talking crazy quilt blocks in the hoop today. So, everybody that's watching, tell me where you're watching from. Tell me if you have a story about a crazy quilt. Maybe that's an heirloom, or maybe it's one that you've created in the hoop as well. It's definitely a technique that's been around for a very long time, and has some really cool things that you can do with your crazy quilt. So tell us out there where you're watching from, and if you've ever made a crazy quilt, whether it's with your sewing machine or maybe in the hoop. So I see Lisa is that Giartano says that she's got storms in Mississippi. So I'm sorry to hear that. Hopefully your power holds out, Lisa. So hi, everybody. We have people watching from Texas, Michigan, Arkansas, Ohio. Stephanie Young, my friend out there. Hey, how are you today? So thank you. Anything that I stitch is crazy, she says. I love that. So definitely some days are like that. I definitely agree, Stephanie. So hi, Bet. Bet is a friend out in Arizona. So how are you today? Jackie, good to see you here. Jackie Kramer. And so many people keep commenting. I love to see where everybody's watching from. So Mississippi, people from all over. We have our Diana Mullen Atkinson here today. And oh my gosh, just popping in. South Carolina, Virginia. I'm feeling like we might have every state represented. So Jackie says that she's done designs in the book, The Crazy Quilt Blocks from Dime. And that's actually one of the things we're going to talk about today. I love that book because it has some really cool projects, not just a block. So, which is always great. So Oklahoma, Chicago, oh my goodness, Connecticut. So welcome, everyone. I'm so excited that you are here. So crazy quilting with your embroidery machine. I think that it's a great technique to do. It's a little less crazy whenever it's done with your embroidery machine, because we know our embroidery designs produce the same results every single time. So Jill Stoll says she has a crazy quilt from 1886. Oh man, Jill, that's impressive. I would love to see that. So let's get started with talking about some things that I've done here, and we'll talk about some in the hoop aspects of crazy quilting. So I'm going to head over to my camera here, and I've got just a couple of blocks. These are done in the hoop. I'm actually going to show you some that I've pieced with my sewing machine and how we can get this special quilting. But you guys know crazy quilting is, the crazy part of it is that nothing is alike. It's unconventional. It's very unique. So all the patches are different and unique. And you can see my blocks here. I've got a variety of different textures of fabric. I even used this confetti dot. This is a woven fabric that almost looks like a tweed look to it. Some lace in here, some fabric that had like kind of like a glitter look to it. This had embroidery already on it, on the fabric, which I thought was really nice to use. So that's one thing I love about crazy quilting is you can mix different types of fabrics, and also the embellishments are very unique to each quilt. So these stitches that are along the seam here, originally done by hand, something that I don't do. I let my embroidery machine do all that hard work. But stitching these by hand was, I think, the most beautiful part of crazy quilt blocks back, when they were originally created. So the handwork was just gorgeous, but the fabric combinations to me make a huge difference in which fabrics you use. So this block here to me is a little bit more of kind of that traditional look where you're combining velvets and satins. These are old ties, some silk dupioni in here, but garment fabric. So left over from garment construction, I think is one of the original reasons that people made quilts was using up their scraps. So we can still do that with our embroidery machine, use up those scraps. I love that. But look at these beautiful stitches over the top here, and even an embroidered embellishment. So that's another great thing, is adding that special touch. So if you're someone that doesn't love to do a quilt label, maybe after you have stitched your quilt, you feel like you've done. Crazy Quilting is a great way to put those embellishments right on the front. So I've seen plenty of quilts that have dates and names, personalizations right on the blocks. So very similar to these designs here, you can see that these are embroidered designs that were put in these blocks. And notice that they're not even centered in the block. They're really just placed kind of wherever. And so if you have ever wanted to try quilting, but you're worried about things lining up perfectly, man, this is a perfect form of quilting to do, whether it's on your embroidery machine or with your sewing machine, because nothing matches up. So talk about a stress-free form of quilting, right? So this is actually one of the blocks that are one of the projects that's in our today's Crazy Quilt book that we're going to talk about a little bit later. It has all of these blocks included. These were all stitched in the hoop, which means that the embroidery machine not only did that beautiful stitching that embellishes the seams, but also the block was pieced in the hoop, which again, a little less crazy in the sense that our embroidery machine is does a perfect quilting and piecing every time. Here's another one of those little projects here. This one without any embroidery embellishments other than the stitches, made out of scraps of silk dupioni. For this particular bag, but just a nice way to use some of those scraps and make your crazy patch blocks and then turn them into another project. So what do you guys think? So hopefully you guys love crazy quilting, and I definitely do love it. I love doing it with my embroidery machine, but it's still a fun technique to do when you're sewing. So so Joan says that she's always loved crazy quilting way back in my grandma's time. I totally agree, Joan. And it's definitely a nostalgic kind of feeling that I think most people get whenever we're talking about crazy quilting, right? So, and then Sharon says, I made a bag that looks antique with mine. So I think that's a great example. So love that. Love the look of it. It is definitely something that looks timeless. It's heirloom items, definitely even created with your embroidery machine. So we still have people popping in. So pretty with even plain fabric. I agree, Joy. And so it's a great way to definitely use scraps of variety of fabric that you have, but certainly if you want to just use your quilting cotton, you can certainly do that also. Hi, Jill. Jill popped in, so another friend of mine. So good to see everybody here today. And so Sybil. So I love the look of crazy quilting, but never done it. So Sybil, you definitely need to try it. It's super easy. And obviously it's a great way to use up your scraps. So, and if you have a special fabric, that's a great place to use it. Definitely good for old clothes, for something that you want to create like a memory quilt, if it's clothes of a loved one, or, you know, like I said, special fabrics that you have. So these two projects here actually came from the today's Crazy Quilt book here. I have it under my camera. So this book written by Eileen Roach, as you guys know. And she included in this book tons of projects that you could create. So you get the designs that you saw on my examples, as well as the actual blocks. So you get the embroidery design so that you can piece these blocks. So you could leave them plain, or you can add embellishments as well. But it's a really easy process. And this book is all of the instructions and also all of the design files that you need in all of the embroidery machine formats. So, so let's kind of take a look at how that would work. So when you're stitching the designs that are in the book, or doing crazy quilting by embroidery machine, you can see in the background there, it actually stitches a placement, a layout of the actual block. and then you'll place your fabric down, and the embroidery machine actually does the stitching for you. So it stitched this first one. The next piece will be right sides together, and it'll actually stitch that seam. And you can see that this is number 2. So I know exactly where to place each piece of fabric. So then you'll flip that out, and then you'll be ready for number 3. And then you'll place a large piece of fabric here and continue the process until this is covered. Again, a great way to use your scraps. Notice I didn't even cut this to size. I just put a large piece of fabric there. It's really easy and really simple to do. So once you piece your block in the hoop, the nice thing about doing crazy quilting with your embroidery machine is the design file also includes the decorative stitches. So once you're done stitching, these will stitch. You can change the color if you want to have a variety of different colors, but it's a combination of these different stitch types. So these are some very long stitches here. These are kind of some shorter stitches, but they just have a variety of different types of those heirloom stitches that quilt your block. Now with crazy quilting, traditionally it doesn't have batting. It actually has like a muslin kind of foundation, and then hand quilted for these with these over the seam. So we're piecing in the hoop on a stabilizer that is a no-show type stabilizer. So that's a dime exquisite stabilizer. You might have something similar, but it's a very lightweight stabilizer. You can actually see that I can see right through it. So it's sheer, but this is a, I would almost venture to say even a little bit lighter weight than what the traditional muslin was that they used to do this type of quilting on. So it's not going to make your block really stiff or anything like that. So that's the fabric or the stabilizer that we use in those particular blocks. So now those are blocks done in the hoop. Has anybody ever pieced with your sewing machine some crazy patch blocks and you've wanted to quilt them, but you just didn't know how to go about that process without doing it by hand? And I tell you, by hand is definitely not something that I want to do. So I've got a couple of blocks here that I actually pieced on my sewing machine, one of them. So you can see on the back there, all my messy seams there. So this was pieced on the sewing machine. And if I wanted to say, skip this step of doing the in the hoop process, but I wanted to get these stitches on this block perfectly in the seam, then I'm going to show you exactly how I would do this. So these two blocks were done just regular sewing, but I would like to decorate those with those stitches. Now you could certainly use those stitches, the decorative ones on your sewing machine, to do this very thing, but we have a way to create those stitches perfectly for a block. So let's see what everybody's saying, and then we'll head over and show you that. So anybody that knows me knows that I'm a software lover, so I'm going to show you exactly how to create those in software there. So Sheila says, I've made a crazy quilt vest out of fabric that looks like Victorian fabrics. Wow, that is so cool. I love that, Sheila. And Star says she's late and she'll have to watch the replay. So yes, definitely, Star. So, but tell us, Star, what you think of crazy quilting. Do you like to do it on your sewing machine? Have you done it via your embroidery machine? So tell us what you're working on crazy quilt wise. So we still have people joining from all over. Elaine says she loves the Crazy Quilt book. I definitely agree, Elaine. Like I said, I love that you can make a project, a useful project out of your Crazy Quilt block. So I think that makes such a huge difference in how many times I would actually create one of these. If I just have a bunch of blocks, I might not always want to do a quilt. So, okay, so now that you've seen my blocks that I've pieced with my sewing machine, let's see exactly how we can add stitches to those blocks. So now I'm over in my embroidery tool shed, and I am using a feature today from our My Quilt Embellisher software. So My Quilt Embellisher is the program that I'm using this feature from. So inside of My Quilt Embellisher, I've got this option here, and it's has the choice of a special motif. So when I click that, it opens up this page here, and you can see that these look like individual heirloom stitches. And in fact, that feather design to me is one of the most iconic heirloom stitches, and they are all done with your embroidery machine. So let me show you how to use them. So I'm going to choose this one. This is actually one of my favorite one. I think it makes a cute stitch. So once you select the stitch, if you just click one time on your screen, it'll place one of those stitches. And each one after that, depending on where you click, it will place another one all of the same size. So you can perfectly click. So all I'm doing is clicking one time and creating that look there. Now, if you really want this to look hand done, even though your embroidery machine does it, the software has the ability to make variable size stitches by me clicking and dragging. So you can see that as I drag, I can make it as large or as small. And then when I release my mouse, it places it. And so the next one that is attached to it, I could make it a little bit larger, maybe the next one a little bit smaller. Because, well, we all know that hand stitches, no two are probably ever going to be the same, right? So that is the cool thing about placing these stitches in the software in this manner, is you can actually kind of mimic the look of hand sewing, even though the embroidery machine is doing the work. So, and there's so many to choose from. So let's choose another one and do the same thing. So we'll do this feather type stitch here and click OK. And let's do that again. So if I click one time, it'll drop that size on the screen, and I can actually click at the end of each one and they'll all be the same size. Or I can click and drag, because notice how it's not only the size, but the orientation. So let's just say if you were making a set of Crazy Quilt Stitches for my block, the seam may look like this. So I can actually follow along that exactly how I need to. So hopefully it's not that bad. But let's talk about how to get them on your actual block. So I'm going to bring in an image of my block. So I actually took a photograph of the two blocks that I have here. And so I'm going to bring those in by doing this load backdrop feature. So the load backdrop allows me to select an image to trace or draw on top of. Okay, so I've taken a photograph. So we'll use this one because it's got fewer seams for decorating. So there's my actual block. Now I specifically took this picture on top of my cutting mat here because I wanted to make sure that I could tell the software to scale this image. So I'm going to go here and choose my define scale, and let's zoom in. And I know my cutting mat here, this is a 1-inch area. So if I mark this area and release it, see, it thinks that's 4.5 inches when it's really only a 1-inch area. So you know how you get your PDF patterns and you have to make sure that that 1-inch square actually prints out as a 1-inch square? That's what we're doing here. And then the other thing I might do is lighten up the background so you guys can see the stitches really well as we're creating them. Okay, so now let's zoom in a little closer to the block. We don't really need to see all of the mat. And we want to place our stitches along that seam. So I'm going to choose one of the options. And let's do this. This is, to me, another one that's very iconic here. And I'm going to click and drag just like that. Click and drag. And then that one is a long stitch, so I only needed 2. And I think that that looks great. And so then you can go back, grab another stitch here. And let's do something a little bit different. Click and drag. Oh, maybe don't want it that big. And click and drag. But you can see how if your seam line is not straight, you could actually follow along that if you needed to, which is actually really kind of cool, especially if you're, you know, crazy quilting. You may not be so particular about what your seams were doing. So you just keep going and creating those stitches. We'll do one more, and then I've got one that I already created here. And then we're going to talk about how do you get that to your embroidery machine. So this example here, so I'm going to click and drag, click and drag, click and drag. And remember, if I just click one time on the screen, it drops one at that same particular size each time. But notice it didn't let me choose the duration or the angle. So I'm going to remove that one and keep going this direction here. Just like that. And now, so if you wanted to stitch this design on the block that you had actually already pieced with your sewing machine, how would you get it over there? How would you line it up? So tell me over in the chat your thoughts on that, and I'll show you what I would do here. So now, one of the things that's I also love about software, you guys, if you've seen me, you know I can't live without my software. I think that it really makes my embroidery machine do much more than it was really meant to do. So in the software, I can actually add placement marks that will help me get my block in the hoop where it needs to be. I could also print a template. I could use something like our PAL 2 light to get it lined up. But tell me over in the chat what you would do to get yours lined up in the hoop once you got your design already. Okay, so from here, what I would do is I would use our built-in placement mark. So if I click on this option here, it gives me the ability to put these marks all around. And so these marks actually go around the design, but I could also put them around my block too. So let's just put these, I'm going to put quite a few of them. And remember, these go around the design, but we're going to move them to around the block. So you can see this one here is too high if I'm going to use it for a block placement, but I can move these. So I can actually drag this. Let me turn off my snap to grid here so I can put it exactly where I want it. So these corner pieces I can put right around the corner of my block so that when I save this design, it's going to line up perfectly with my block if I get it placed. You could also use these individual marks here. So let me pull one out of the way. So these little marks here, which is just like a little T, these are all basting stitches. What you could do with this that would be helpful is you could actually put that right at one of your seams so that you know that seam gets lined up right there. And I'll move this one down so we could see it on this one here. So that's marking that seam. You don't have to do that. And in fact, on the example that I stitched, I didn't put so many, but I just wanted to give you an idea. But these placement marks here can give you the location to place your design in the hoop. Okay, so if we were to save this, you can save to any format for any embroidery machine. So you click save. Choose your machine format, give it a name, okay? And then you're ready to take that to your embroidery machine. And then once you get to your embroidery machine, what it's going to do, I can watch my stitch simulator here in the software. The first thing that it's going to stitch is the placement marks. So the placement marks stitch first. And you can see that they stitch quickly. They're long basting stitches, but you can see that they'll stitch. Of course, the image, let me turn off the image. So the image won't be in the background while we're stitching. And so then once you get your block placed down, then it'll finish stitching the design. So I'll show you what I mean about that here coming up in just a second. The other thing you could do is you could print a template. So in any of our Dime software, you have the ability to print a template, and printing this will help you get that lined up perfectly on your block. So I see Bet says, I would probably use the projector on my Solaris. That is a great use of your projector for sure, Bet. I really love that. So, but yeah, there's many of ways to line it up. So you guys already are embroiderers, right? So you know the methods that you use to get things lined up in the hoop. So kind of similar, you're going to use some of those things as well. So let me head over to my camera again. And I'll show you what I did with those marks. So here, if I've got I printed out my template. Okay, so that's one thing that you could do. Let's actually see this since it's here. So here's my block, and it actually was this orientation here, I think. So actually this orientation. And so this is my printed design template. Okay, I could actually place that down over my block, and you can see how I can kind of see through that target paper. That's our print and stick target paper, so that I could line those up. Well, then look at that. It gives me a crosshair for lining up this in the hoop. Okay, so that's one thing. So I could take this to my embroidery machine and put this in the hoop. And lining up those crosshairs is going to make sure it's straight in the hoop. And then I could center my needle over that. But here's what I did with those placement marks. So here you can see in my hoop, I stitched those placement marks. They're kind of small, but they are basting stitches. They're actually meant for like continuous embroidery and stuff, but you can use them for this method as well. Now, I didn't do as many, but notice when I put my block down here, I can perfectly line up my edges with those marks. So now I know that when I press start on the embroidery machine, the design that's going to stitch out, which is this design here, it's going to align because I made sure my block was in the same place in the hoop. So hopefully that makes sense with the placement marks. Now, notice all of the seams. Remember, I moved some of those marks, so you could move those over so that you make certain that you've got your seams in the right place if you're concerned with that. But what I would do here is just use a little spray adhesive or some sort of water-soluble glue, something that's safe for your embroidery machine. And that's going to hold that in place while the embroidery machine does the quilting of these stitches. So isn't that easy? How cool is that? So what do you guys think? So I see Janice says, I don't create embroidery. I buy what I want to do. I load it and go is my mantra. I actually, I love to do that sometimes too, Janice, but I actually love to create designs. I create so many designs and so much in my software that sometimes I don't even stitch it, but I know that that's not for everybody. So if you like to purchase designs and stitch them out, hey, there's something for everybody in this world, right? So that's just a way that you can actually line up a block that you stitched with your sewing machine in your embroidery hoop. So, and that's not just for crazy quilting. Maybe you want to do that to embellish one block, or if you want to do like quilt as you go, that's another option there too. And then so Thisbe says, I love learning how to use my embellisher software. Oh, awesome. I'm so glad that you have that. So thank you for explaining placement marks. Absolutely. So I think we buy the software, we should get the most out of it. And then Carolyn Morrow says, are you using Embroidery Toolshed? I am, but I was using the features from my quilt embellisher. So our Embroidery Toolshed software is a free program that you can actually download and start using it. It will resize, rotate a design, let you change colors, things like that. But I'm using a feature that is from our My Quilt Embellisher software. And so you would need the My Quilt Embellisher to do those crazy quilt stitches. And the My Quilt Embellisher features install inside of your embroidery tool shed when you purchase it. So this by Chris Embroidery. So I just read the name correctly. This by Chris Embroidery. She would use her built-in camera for lining up. I definitely agree with that. So unfortunately, not everybody has that, but we do need some a variety of ways of doing things as well. So and then Gretchen Killingsworth says, I bet variegated thread would look great in those antique looking stitches. Absolutely. I think that you could use any kind of thread. So one of the blocks that I showed had metallic in it. Variegated would be great. Even using an embroidery thread that maybe had a matte finish so that it did definitely look more hand done too. So hey, Kirsten, our friend Kirsten Swanson, so nice to see you here. So she said crazy quilting reminds me of my grandma. I definitely agree with you on that. So she could do so much with just little bits of fabric. all pieced together. So, oh, that's awesome. So, such memories, right? So, okay, if you have any questions, let me know. But that is all about our crazy quilting in the hoop. It is so easy. It really doesn't require like a ton of explanation. It's just really creative and what you want to do with it. So, and then Janice Hero says, is there a software for just viewing all of the designs? Yes, there is. That is our Perfect Stitch Viewer. So that program is an icon viewer. So you install that and you'll be able to see all of your designs just right in their folders, Janice. So yeah, I think we have a software for everything, which I absolutely love. So I'm fortunate to be here and use all these. So, and then where can I get the book? So you can get that over at dzgns.com. And so the link is actually posted in the chat there. So click on dzgns.com and you can get the Crazy Quilt book, and it is actually on special today. So let me head over and show you that. So who doesn't love a good special, right? So the today's Crazy Quilting with Your Embroidery Machine book is on special for $29.99 with free shipping. So make sure you use the Crazy Quilt to get free shipping. So I love that. So this book, not only does it have the instructions for the projects, but it also comes with the designs to do those in the hoop. So the blocks in the hoop. So you're going to get these 3 blocks. So you have a little variation in your blocks. And of course, those blocks can be used to make a much larger project. You can make enough blocks to make an entire quilt if you want. Also, those designs are perfect, but you can add your own designs as well if you've got a special design or maybe a personalization, a date, a monogram, all great on Crazy Quilting. So you get those 3 blocks, and then the projects include a wall hanging, a throw pillow, but certainly, again, you could put those together and make as many as you want to make a full quilt. But these are actually some of my favorite. Look at these cute little projects, guys. So a book cover, which I think is perfect, especially since books, I think, are still a staple in my home. So I love the idea of covering a special book with the Crazy Quilting. The clutch, which you saw, and then also these 2 little, a wristlet and the eyeglass case here. So all projects that use a little bit of Crazy Quilting, but make a functional project, which I absolutely love. So hopefully you will love those too. Okay, so Michelle says, did you use the same stabilizer when you did the final block stitches? Yeah, I just, when I hooped my stabilizer, Michelle, that was the stabilizer that I used for the entire process. For my particular blocks, I stitched those and then took those out of the hoop with the stitches just through the stabilizer. And then my idea was that I would make something else out of that project, so I didn't put any additional backing or a block on the back. You could, before you stitch those decorative stitches, you could put a piece of fabric on the back if you want to do that decorative quilting through. And then you've got one block that is finished front to back. Just maybe match your thread on the back, I think would be a good idea. You could also add batting if you want. Traditionally, that's not how Crazy Quilts were done, but hey, we are in a modern world, so we generally kind of do things a little bit differently. So if you want to add batting, you could certainly do that as well behind one of those blocks to create one complete quilt block that actually has batting in it. So, and like I said, if you match your thread on the back, it'll look kind of nice on both sides. So, okay, so you guys know that every week we have a free design that we call our on the house design because it's on the house. So this design, you can, all of these designs actually for the entire year, every week, you can find at dzgns.com at any time. And if you would, we would love to see your projects that you make with these designs, but with any of our dime designs. So tag us and post your images, dime sew along, hashtag dime sew along, hashtag on the house, or hashtag exquisite thread. All of those will make sure that we can find your project. So share with us. We'd love to see. So Karen says discount question mark. And yes, so today's Crazy Quilt with your embroidery machine book is on special for $29.99 with free shipping if you use the free ship code Crazy Quilt. So grab that over at dzgns.com. Okay, so we always love to share the projects that we found on Facebook or Instagram or wherever you tagged us. And so here we've got Sunny Girl again. Sunny Girl has been around the block and back. This, I am pretty sure, is one of our most popular designs. She's still over there on DZGNS, so if you don't have Sunny Girl, make sure you grab her. So this cute little bag set here with a drawstring bag and a little zipper pouch was done by Needle Quirks. I think Needle Quirks is Carolyn Hargrove, I think. So thank you so much for sharing your image. So gorgeous set. And then once a month, our On the House design comes with project instructions. Now, we like to see what projects you make all month long and well, all year long. And but once a month, we create a project and Eileen shares that with you for something that she created. So last week was the cute little coaster set that had a different seasonal tree on each one. So those seasonal trees have been the designs a few different times. So the fall, summer, spring, and winter tree. And of course, you could make a whole set if you want. Now, that design that you see stitched there was done by Susan Timchek. So thank you so much for sharing your project. Super cute, and I love that. And it also shows you how to make that little fabric basket. So yes, Kirsten, she said, Susan, your project was quick. I like the basket fabric you used. So yes, isn't that cute? It's a great way to hold all of your coasters all in one location. So, and a great gift set. So share. If you make a project, please share those with us. We'd love to see what you're working on, just as well as you guys love to see what we're working on. And so this week is On the House design is this adorable school bus with the little doggies in the window. So this is our cool dog school bus. So this inspiration of this was for dog days of summer and back to school. So I love them. They're all looking out the little window and they even have on little sunglasses. I don't know if you can tell that on the screen, but they are adorable. So a fantastic design for you to stitch. I can't wait to see what all of you guys do with this design. Make sure that you go over to DZGNS to get any of your On the House designs and share with us what you're making. We love it. So thank you guys for being here. I really enjoy taking over between friends. And next week, you'll see Eileen back here again. And so until I see you guys next time, thank you so much for being here and bye for now.